I'm here at Crofts Quinta de Huerta. It is the end of September 2022, and with a perfect backdrop of the Ferradura vineyard, an extraordinary vineyard which was planted in the last decade of the 19th century. And this year will stand out for being a remarkably dry year. The winter period, the dormancy period between November and February 2022, here at Huerta we only recorded 78 millimeters of rain. Now, the average for this period is much more in the order of 370 millimeters. Fortunately, in March was wet. We got 75 millimeters of rain, and that was very important for the season to start off with some water. Otherwise, the vines would have struggled even further. The beginning of the season started with budburst on the 20th of March. 20th of March is relatively later than normal, but this was the vines adapting to these dry conditions and budbursting later than normal. And the spring was dry, it did not rain a lot, and it was fairly warm. And when flowering came on the 19th of May, we continued to register very low levels of water. So again, the whole season, we had not recorded more than 195 millimeters from November up until the 31st of May, which is extremely dry. And because of the dry conditions this season, we've had very little pressure from disease. That has been a really good relief and made the work in the vineyard just dedicated to working the canopies. And as we entered the height of summer, we started what was to become the first of many heat waves. At the beginning of June, we recorded our first 40 degrees centigrade temperatures. It is unusual to be that hot that early on in the season. And we went into July recording the hottest July that we have had so far, with an average of 28.3 degrees centigrade. In fact, on the 14th of July, here in Pinhão, we recorded 46.5 degrees centigrade. That is the highest temperature we have ever recorded. And as a result of the very hot June and July, veraison only was recorded in the last week of July. That is, the vines signaling that they were having difficulty in ripening the grapes. And one of the characteristics of this extremely dry, arid year is a term that we refer to RSG, restricted spring growth. And this is where our vines have difficulty in reaching the upper wire. We see that across many of our vineyards where the lack of water, the heat, has just limited their growth. And it is curious that this characteristically restricted growth is a consequence of a cycle of several very dry, hot years in a row. And for that, we have to go back to the 1940s. The 1940s decade as a whole was very dry and hot. And the records show that there were 4 years where we also had less than 200 millimeters of rain during the dormant period. 1942, 1943, 1945, and 1948. So although this is a year where our vineyards have suffered, we know it is a cycle, and we look forward to getting back to more normal growing seasons again. So when we came to the end of August, we were looking at our vineyards across the valley, and we had many different situations. And the vineyards in the most arid eastern part of the Douro, we started the harvest early. And in fact, here at Huerta, the harvest started on 31st of August, and at Vargelas, we started on the 3rd of September. And at the beginning of the harvest, we could see the impact of this very dry, hot season. The vines had very small berries, but they were remarkably resistant. And although they were very small, which gives them a very good juice to skin ratio, they were remarkably sturdy. And that happens in years where they have been suffering from hydric stress right from the beginning of the season. And a few days into the start of the harvest, on the 6th of September, we had a very welcome 4 millimeters of rain, which was great to just settle the dust, keep the temperature a bit cool, and it gave a bit of a relief to the vines. And for many of the vineyards, that little bit of water did a great job to helping refine the grapes. A bit later on the 13th and 14th of September, here we did get some more significant quantity of rain. We had 30 millimeters fall here at Quinta da Rueda on the 13th and the 14th. And that rain was actually very important for many of these vineyards, which were really suffering. And I was concerned at how are they going to cope to go into the next season. And 2022 will also be remembered for the year that we came back to foot treading. After 2 years interruption because of COVID, coming back to see the lagars full of people with the disciplined treading at the start and then the joyous treading at the end of the evening, and knowing that this is the way that great ports are made. It is a year to remember. And after the second period of rain, we had vineyards which just were a delight. They absorbed that water, they fine-tuned to perfection, and we have lots of lagars from the middle of the vintage forward, which are showing beautiful colour and great aromas. And I look forward to seeing the quality that these turn out to be.